MusicalTalk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of MusicalTalk. I'm Thos and I have been for most of 2018. There are a few days left, so anything could happen, but I do wonder who I'll be in 2019. Well, of course, it's time for our annual and much despised Christmas and New Year quiz here on MusicalTalk. I'll be asking a series of questions, quite often relating to little nuggets of information I've learnt over the course of the year, which I haven't been able to plop into an episode, and quite a lot of songs, which you'll have heard already here on MusicalTalk in the last year, or some songs which I hope you're going to hear in the next year, 2019. So, quiz questions and music. Who could ask for anything more? Well, Oliver Twist is usually the answer to that question. But, and here's a clue, we won't be referring to the works of Lionel Bart at all in today's programme. However, we do have a few gifts and surprises. And the first of them is an entirely exclusive recording of a piece of music which was the prologue to this year's MusicalTalk Pick of the Fringe 2018, The House of Edgar by Tom Arnold. It's an entirely instrumental piece, and it was played over and over again in a modulating way as people assembled in the auditorium to see that fantastic show, and it really created an atmosphere. Both Michael Gordon-Shapiro and myself were much taken by it, and so Tom has very kindly made a recording of it exclusively for MusicalTalk. So, as it's a prologue, let's start today's quiz with that. There we are, the prologue from The House of Edgar in an exclusive recording for MusicalTalk. Well, I did say there was a quiz, and the best way to prove it is to ask you some questions. So, why not start with the first one? Well, I can think of no good reason not to, so I shall. Stephen Schwartz turns 70 years old this year in March. And of course he's responsible for one of the biggest shows of the last 15 years, Wicked, as well as such evergreens as Godspell and Pippin. But what is his middle name? And whilst you're trying to work that out, let's hear a song called Come to My Show from Ed Fringe the Musical by the lovely Patrick Stockbridge.
Yo, 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 what is up, Edinburgh?
Let me tell you a little story.
Chemical High with the Iron Brew crew.
Here we go, here we go,
Here we go.
here we go.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
show.
There ain't no other mother-loving place you can go. For the rest of the year, see the sights, ride my flow. But your life will be complete if you come to my show. Got my flyers in hand, got a spiel prepared. With my engaging eyes, I catch them unawares. Then out of the blue, shout a time in someone's face. 3:45 on Bristow Place.
What wares do you sell, I pray, do tell?
Such flowery words must be a thesp as well.
It's a modern adaptation of a Homer classic set in post-apocalyptic Spain. Most of it, we rap it.
The man swaps flyers and returns to his cast. A version of the Odyssey.
He's playing the mast.
And the odds are pretty low that we'll try to attend. But one flyer down, move on, start again. come see a show.
No, come to my show.
Ignore my doppelgangers all stood in a row. Whip out your wallet and
Splash down the dough.
as we'll possibly break even if you come to my show.
Tell me about it.
Okay, a middle-aged couple wearing chinos and checks with a map in one hand and a camera round their necks. Dazed and confused, they sift through the hordes. It is clear that these imposters have
Never trod the boards.
Accumulating flyers like flies to a turd. With smiles so sweet they hang on to each word. They say they've got plans to see a thing at the castle with fireworks and cannonballs. What sort of arsehole would produce that?
It clicks.
What can you do when the lovable Americans are here for the tattoo? You bid them farewell and safe trip in UK and return to the grind of promoting your play.
It's rhyming dictionary time.
It's always what time and where, and I'll try to be there. But the guys I ensnare seem to not really care. But I shouldn't despair, trust my charisma and flair. With a magnetic stare, I'll keep the public aware. But the mile is unfair, so let your melodies blare. Or chain yourself to a chair, or keep birds in your hair. Or leave your breasts bare, coat yourself in Gruyere. Be as extreme as you dare, and the better you'll fare. But we all speak hot air, and a purchase is rare. So don't rip and don't tear, give a flyer, sell a pair.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Come on, everybody, put your hands in the air.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Even if you've just got one hand.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
That's it, look, that one-handed person is doing an excellent job.
Come see a show, now come to my show.
Oh, we got somebody throwing up over here.
Mic drop.
There we are. Come to My Show by Patrick Stockbridge, and you'll be hearing more about the show from which that came, Ed Fringe the Musical, in the new year. So stay tuned for that. But the question, of course, was, what is the middle name of Wicked composer and lyricist Stephen Schwartz? Well, Wicked was written as composer and lyricist by Stephen Lawrence Schwartz. Now, Stephen Schwartz composed and wrote his first opera in 2009 called Seance on a Wet Afternoon, which was adapted from a British film made in 1968 starring Richard Attenborough. The next year, Richard Attenborough made his directorial debut with a British musical film, based on a much-lauded stage play about a significant 20th century event. But what was that film called? And by no way of a clue, here's a song which is entirely unrelated to the answer. It's from a marvellous show by Simon Clayton called Paradise Rocks, a reworking of Milton in the style of Elvis Presley, and this song is called Snake Hips.
Well, good evening, ladies, gentlemen, people who ain't so sure. My name is Danny Morningstar, and these here are my rebels. Now we're gonna show you how they rock and roll back on the mainland. So tell me, are you ready? I said, are you ready? When you hear that kick, your fingers click. When you hear that snare, you put your hands in the air. When you hear that guitar, I don't care who you are, you're gonna know. You're gonna know. Snake hips, hawk eyes, coxcomb and antelope thighs. Snake hips, a wolf smile. Come on and dance in the aisles. Get out of your seat, clap on the 2, 3, 4 with me, and dance all night. You're at the devil's party tonight. Well now, it seems you kids don't know how to rock and roll just yet. That's okay, you came to the right place. I'm gonna teach you. So first, you need to get the clap. That's 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Good. And stop. Now you need to learn to move your hips like a real rock and roll star. So take your left hand and put it on your left hip. Yeah, that's right. Now take your right hand and put that on your right hip. Good. Now move a left. Now move a right. Now move a left. Now move a right. Snake hips, hawk eyes, coxcomb and antelope thighs. Snake hips, a wolf smile. Come on and dance in the aisles. Get out of your seat, clap on the 2, 3, 4 with me, and dance all all night. You're at the devil's party tonight. That's right. Snake hips, hawk eyes, a coxcomb and antelope thighs. Snake hips, a wolf smile, come on and dance in the aisles. Get out of your seat, clap on the 2, 3, 4 with me, and dance all night. You're at the devil's party tonight. The snake hips, hawk eyes, a coxcomb and antelope thighs. Snake hips, a wolf smile, come on and dance in the aisle. Get out of your seat, clap on the 2, 3, 4 with me, and dance all night. You're at the devil's party tonight.
There we are, Snake Hips from Paradise Rocks by Simon Clayton. And the answer to the question, which was, what was the name of the British musical film which marked the directorial debut of Richard Attenborough? It was, of course, Oh, What a Lovely War. Incidentally, both the films Seance on a Wet Afternoon and Oh, What a Lovely War feature British character actor Gerald Sim, who, and I think this should be noted, was the brother of Lord Attenborough's wife. Well, that brings us very nicely onto the subject of family. And like most people, my own family is peppered with stories of random encounters with famous people. You know, the kind of thing. Great Aunt Mildred saying, "Oh, I once met the Duke of Windsor in a lift in 1934. Anything could have happened." But of course it didn't. I must say that's not a real story. I don't have a Great Aunt Mildred. However, there are some real stories from my own family history, and we'll be touching on a few of those as the bases of a few of these questions, including the next one. My great aunt Tess worked as a dancer in the 1930s in Germany. Whilst there, she worked with which great German actress, born in December 1901, star of The Blue Angel and Destry Rides Again? She sang songs in both, incidentally, and of course a close friend of Noel Coward. Who was the great actress my great aunt Tess worked with? And to give you a little bit of thinking time, let's hear a song by Tom Arnold from his wonderful show The House of Edgar. This is The Raven.
Distinctly I remember a dark and cold December, when each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. With haste I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books relief of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore. For the rare and radiant maiden, who the angels named Lenore, it was then I heard a gentle rapping at my chamber door. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. In there stepped a stately raven, summoned by the name Lenore, and it perched upon my chamber door and whispered,
nevermore.
The raven sitting lonely at my lintel did speak only that one word, as if her soul in that one word she did outpour. Nothing further than she uttered, not a further than she fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow you will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. You will leave me as she left me,
nevermore.
Then I felt the air grow denser, like the aura of a spectre, and I heard the spirit's footfalls tinkle on the tufted floor. Wretch, thy God have lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee. Give me respite, give me mercy from my memories of Lenore. Spare me this mercy, so I forget my lost Lenore. Oh, spare me this mercy. Leave no black bloom as a token for that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quoth the raven,
Nevermore.
and the raven never flitting still is sitting, and the lamplight o'er her streaming throws her shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow shall be lifted nevermore.
There we are, The Raven from the House of Edgar, this year's Musical Talk Pick of the Fringe. And the answer to the question, the great German actress that my great aunt Tess worked with in the 1930s was Marlene Dietrich. And staying with Marlene Dietrich, which famous composer and writer of the musical theatre adaptation of The Apartment, called Promises, Promises, was Marlene's musical director during the 1950s and recorded 4 albums with her? And I'll give you a clue. I was very surprised to learn this. It seems like a very unexpected mashup of different musical eras. And whilst you're having a ponder on that, let's hear a medley of songs by Leo Mercer and Stephen Hyde from their 2017 show, the much-lauded Marriage of Kim K.
Hey Stephen, be fun, come on, chill out and watch us. Look, tell me your anger.
I'm writing a tune.
Okay, then I'll see. Shut up, what she said. One sec, what's confusing me? Can you sing to me? Like I know the sound of your voice. Okay, I'm counting down for you. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So how are you? So she knows him. And why are you calling? And who is it calling? I know I can't. Can't what? I couldn't. Do what? No, I won't what? I shouldn't. Shouldn't do what? No, I'm so married now.
You're not going anywhere. a serpent.
When O.J. killed Napoleon, is this how it happened?
It on no one like life without love. In peace of
That idiot
my
when he
belief
and
from
they were cops that chasing never stopped.
So
Is that just 'cause we're the prisoners of our
by chance.
choice? What we love? When I was 16, I came of age, and my body it changed. My guardian he changed. He locked me up. I remember dark he proposed. I remember this beg you from me and pretended to care. So come here, you failure, untie me from your chamber, for I was not made to be your chambermaid.
Advice, please. Which shameful tonight, please.
Oh my God, where is my phone? Somewhere here. If Chris finds my phone, he'll find out and I'll die.
A medley of The Marriage of King Kay's songs by Leo Mercer and Stephen Hyde, who also wrote Guy the Musical, as you may remember from the episode earlier in the year. And the question was, which famous composer, who wrote the music to Promises, Promises, an adaptation of the film The Apartment, was also Marlene Dietrich's musical director in the 1950s and recorded 4 albums with her? It was, of course, Burt Bacharach, who in musical theatre terms might be most famous as being included in the lyric by Frank Lesser from his musical Hans Christian Andersen. You probably know it. It's the verse to Wonderful, Wonderful Copenhagen, where the singer sings, I sail up Burt Bacharach and sail down the... Anyway, you get the idea. Back to my family for the next question. My grandmother, May, used to work with Christopher Gable in a dry cleaners establishment in Leytonstone in East London in the period after he stopped being a dancer and was becoming an actor. Now, Christopher Gable appeared in the film version of The Boyfriend by Sandy Wilson and the stage adaptation of The Good Companions by Andre Previn and Johnny Mercer. However, perhaps his biggest role was in the film adaptation of the Cinderella story, with a score by the Sherman Brothers. So, what is the name of that film? And, in a change of tone entirely, we'll listen to a medley of songs from Buried, the musical, by Colla Voce Theatre, which was such a hit at this and last year's Edinburgh Festival Fringe.
Just like me, in another body, a dream, where I have been calling for someone, and I've never gotten a reply. Your story, in line with my life, just memories of always living on the outside. I don't think I've ever met another me before. But sometimes I think, imagine what could be if I let myself feel. Is it something within my power to hold hearts on sleeves? Let my arms grow wider. If I look you in the when children smile, then maybe I'll be something ordinary, something ordinary like her. Lonely road, one knows but you and me, driving free from our history, families, all the things we're supposed to be. Lock them away, and throw me the key as we pick up speed. I start to see you're the only one I want close to me. Oh, were you right? Did I cross the line? Have I thrown it all away? Can it be so that you're the only other person I've shown my true ways, and I don't regret a day? But I'm okay, better this way, better than okay, we're better this way. I'll be okay.
There'll be school days and birthdays, late nights and old friends, too much of anything that's right. Beach walks and sunshine, lullabies at bedtime, hearts that stay true under a roof that's made for you. A love that never fails to fill the room. This other life, Michael, Caroline, this other life, Emma, this other life.
Well, after that medley of songs from Buried the Musical, it's time for the answer to the question. What was the name of the film in which Christopher Gable starred, which was an adaptation of the Cinderella story with a score by the Sherman Brothers? It was, of course, The Slipper and the Rose, a film from 1976. Incidentally, the Queen Mother was particularly taken by the waltz from the ballroom scene by the Sherman Brothers and called it the most beautiful song she'd ever heard. Therefore, you can actually claim that The Slipper and the Rose is a film by royal appointment. Well, let's stay with the Sherman Brothers. They wrote a very successful stage musical in 1974 called Over Here, about a train trip during the Second World War. It starred two of the Andrew sisters, but also featured a newcomer who, only 3 years later, will be starring in two major American musical films. Who is he? And to slide us gently into the answer in a couple of minutes, let's hear a medley of songs from Guy, the Musical, by Leo Mercer and Stephen Hyde.
Mirrors haunt you with your own image. yourself to the limits. Hard days, hard weeks, hard times of year. Hard days, hard weeks, hard times of year.
Dieting yourself to depression. Trying to stay away from your thoughts. Dying from the weight of the pressure. Hard days, hard weeks, hard times a year. Hard days, hard weeks, hard times a year. Shut down your fantasy self. Struggling and struggling won't make you someone else. Open your eyes and open your mind. Unlucky fools, you're still not beautiful.
Bodies of your idols are Bible. You starve yourself until you look right. Scared, skeletal, they're suicidal. It's part of me, it's part of you, it's part of us. It's part of me, it's part of you, it's part of us.
Shut down your fantasy self.
Hiding from the police state, color fucking peacock. What is tonight's soulmate? Fella had a shell of shot. I search, I find, what am I looking for? I really don't mind. Get on the dance floor, stand up, miss loose, and hands up if you want a pitch bend. Gimme, gimme, gimme my new sex friend. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Gimme, gimme, gimme my new sex friend. Whoa, 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 whoa. I wasn't meant with Stephanie, just wasn't me in my circle square. But for the real men out there, bow down to your queen and dance with me. Chant all the real men out there, shout all the real men out there, stamp all the real men out there, bow down to your queen and dance with me.
He asks about my day.
He shares his last 5 years.
He asks, would I choose to be gay?
He says he loves that he is queer.
He brings up his politics.
So he changes the conversation quick.
He says, where'd you wanna go?
He's like anywhere, everywhere, but the truth is, it's less about where than who is.
We click like a light switch.
Love quick as an algorithm.
The rhythm of the heartbeat. Boy, let's you and I meet. We click like a light switch.
Love quick as an algorithm.
The rhythm of the heartbeat.
Boy, let's meet. The perfect conversation, it's straight away nice.
I don't know what it is, but you're just my type.
I've hidden away my face, but we've broken the ice.
It's easy to imagine you take part in my life.
Hello again. Well, the very fact you're still listening means you're desperate to hear the answer to question 6. You may remember I gave you some clues as to the name of the actor who appeared in 2 major American musical films 3 years after his 1974 appearance in Over Here by the Sherman Brothers. But were those clues enough, or are you shouting, "Tell me more, tell me more"? That's another clue. It is, of course, John Travolta. And in Over Here, he sang a song called Dream Drumming. Very much in a crooning style, I should say. But of course, very shortly after that, he was in Saturday Night Fever and Grease. And he never looked back. So, back to my old family yarns. My uncle, Alan, was a noted illustrator, but before that he worked for the Disney Company as an animator when it had a London office in the 1950s to the 1970s in London's Soho area. It was during this time that he held a door open for a very short but very famous British actor who had a long career in musicals on stage and screen, and yet isn't remembered for that at all. When people think of this actor, they don't really think of musical theatre or film. But He worked alongside Christopher Gable in the Good Companions musical in 1974, which I mentioned earlier, and was also in the film of Oh What a Lovely War as General Haig, which was directed by Lord Attenborough. Lots and lots of clues there. You must know who he is. Or at least if you don't, you can probably easily find out. But the question simply is, who is he? And for the next few minutes, we'll hear the title song of the lovely musical Forgive Us, O Father by Arnoud Breitbart and Harry Style.
Forgive us, O Father, for we have sinned. We'll say a Hail Mary, because the Holy Ghost is scary. Everybody wins if you forgive our sins.
I hired a gardener.
I hit a policeman.
I slept with the gardener.
I stole a squash racket.
I fired the gardener.
I made up expenses.
I hired a pool boy.
I shat on that jacket.
Forgive us, O Father, for we have sinned. We kneel before Jesus. We must repent and hope he sees us. Everybody wins if you forgive our sins.
I slept with the pool boy.
I nicked a pink lip balm.
The tennis coach shagged me.
I punched an old granny.
I kept with the pool boy.
I fiddled my taxes.
While screwing the gardener.
I framed my ex-nanny.
Forgive us, O Father, for we have sinned. We say our daily prayer and hope the Lord will treat us fair. Everybody wins if you forgive our sins.
Every week, predictable sessions. Every week, the same confessions. Some people never learn. They do not give a dime if I'm kind or stern. They'll be back next time.
Forgive us, O Father, for we have sinned. We'll say a Hail Mary, because the Holy Ghost is scary. Everybody wins if you forgive, if you forgive, if you forgive our sins.
Well, the question was, which actor appeared on stage in The Good Companions and on film in Oh What a Lovely War and had a door opened for him by my uncle? The answer is Sir John Mills, a British actor with an amazingly long pedigree on stage and film, but isn't really thought of as a musical performer. Yet you can find recordings of him singing in shows in musicals in London from as early as 1933. His very first stage musical was The 5 O'Clock Girl in 1929 at the London Hippodrome, but his first starring role in a musical was in Vivian Ellis's Jill Darling. That's from 1933, and he introduced the song I'm on a Seesaw, which was later covered by Thomas Fats Waller, who hated it. Right, well, as I mentioned, Sir John Mills' first musical was The 5 O'Clock Girl from 1929. That had a score by the American composers and writers Kalmar and Ruby, whose life was turned into a biopic called Three Little Words, incidentally. But it also interpolated old music hall tunes as well, including one of my favourites, I'm Following in Father's Footsteps, I'm Following Me Dear Old Dad, which was introduced originally in 1904 by which famous British male impersonator music hall star. And quite unconnectedly with that, let's have another song from Paradise Rocks. This is Lake of Fire.
Well, the world don't love us and the world don't care, but there ain't nothing in the world can touch us there. We swing our front wheels into line out on the street. We got torn formica and an old jukebox with 4 nickels and dimes. You can hear music that rocks, and you can hear your heart in time to the beat. And baby, you're in my eye line. You're gonna dance with me tonight. To the lake of fire. When we go to the lake of fire, you feel the heat in your on your shirt don't mean nothing in there. You can be someone to us if you know one. Or when we go to the lake of fire, we go to the lake of fire. Is a dog with a snarl on his face and an ugly temper when you're out of your place, and it don't look kindly on kids who just want to rock and roll. They can grind you down, they can suck you in, they can settle your fate with a weighted spin. You gotta watch out, or you can let them take your soul. Baby, you're my hero, you're gonna dance with me tonight. Go to the lake of fire. When we go to the lake of fire. You got your collar turned up, got some grease in your hair, smell of hot metal and the gas in the air. It's a war to walk on these streets when you know one. When we go to the lake of fire, we go to the lake of fire. Thank you very much.
Yes, good. Well, the question was, who introduced in 1904 the song I'm Following in Father's Footsteps, I'm Following My Dear Old Dad, and was a very famous British male impersonator, i.e. a woman who dressed up as a man, in the music hall era. It was Vesta Tilley. And this is the kind of thing you'll only get on Musical Talk. There was a famous joke at that time, the first 10 years of the 20th century, about music hall stars. She was a contemporary of the actor Charles Haydn Coffin, who was a famous Edwardian musical theatre star, and there was a joke at that time, which was as follows. Why was Haydn Coffin? Because he lent his Vesta Tilley. It's good stuff. They don't write them like that anymore. Not only that, it's very unusual, but this joke has a sequel, because a few years later Vesta Tilley married into the British aristocracy. She married a man called Lord de Vries. And this got the wags going again with a new joke about her, which was, why did the Lord give his Vesta Tilley? Because he didn't want the lady to freeze. Unfortunately, I suspect these jokes possibly don't hit home in quite the way they once used to, but they're probably slightly more modern than anything you'll get out of your Christmas crackers this year. Anyway, let's move on to something a little more modern now. Another family story. My father, also Thomas, which is what Thos is short for, in case you've ever wondered. Somebody once asked me if I was Greek. Anyway, my father, who's a Thomas, used to work in a bank, and once had to decline to cash a cheque presented by the famous 1950s and 60s pop and skiffle star Joe Brown. Banking rules were very strict in those days, and you couldn't cash a cheque as freely as you can today. But Joe Brown went on to appear in Charlie Girl, which was the David Henniker hit of 1965. But he also appeared in a 1965 film, which was a British musical, alongside, unbelievably, Una Stubbs and Sid James. Your task, if you choose to accept it, is to identify the name of that British musical film. And, whilst we're waiting, let's have a cabaret number by the wonderful House of Blakewell, who were responsible for this year's smash hit Thor and Loki at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe and beyond. But this is from their cabaret performances, and it's called The Man in Lycra.
He spent his gap year in southern Botswana. He played in a band and he smoked marijuana. He danced on the sand at the full moon in Thailand. He had lots of friends, no man is an island. But since graduation, he's changed his demeanor. He works for a hedge fund and uses a cleaner. The people who judge him can go take a hike. He's Superman when he gets onto his bike. He's a middle-aged man wearing lycra. It makes him faster even though he's stuck behind a Nissan Micra on the way to work through Bow. He's a middle-aged man wearing lycra.
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 Stuck behind a Nissan Micra.
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 On a very expensive bike.
A box full of records, an old tambourine, a cancelled subscription to Vice magazine. Now it's John Lewis kettles, John Lewis sofas, John Lewis V-necks and suede penny loafers.
He sees some young people, a small group of friends, ridiculous haircuts, ridiculous trends. He thinks
they're probably students of graphic design. Their jeans might be tight, but they're not as tight as mine.
He's wearing lycra as he freewheels through the park. Every single Nissan Micra will see him in the dark. He's a middle-aged man wearing lycra.
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 Stuck behind a Nissan Micra.
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 Very expensive.
He's a middle-aged man wearing lycra. A middle-aged man wearing lycra. He's a middle-aged man. Middle-aged man. Middle-aged man wearing lycra. He's a middle-aged man wearing lycra. A middle-aged man wearing lycra. A middle-aged man. Middle-aged man. Middle-aged man wearing lycra.
Well, as you're still here, I'll give you the answer to question 9, which was, what was the name of the film from 1965, which was a British musical film starring Joe Brown, Sid James and Eunice Stubbs? And the answer is 3 Hats for Lisa. What do you mean you never heard of it? It is actually available on DVD, so it is probably worth trying to get a copy of it to see what it's like. You want to know what the plot is? Here's what Wikipedia has to say. 3 young cockneys take a day off work to meet an Italian movie star at Heathrow Airport. She travels with them and their taxi driver in search of some typically British hats. The rule of the game is to steal a hat from its wearer. Lisa wants a Bobby's helmet, a policeman's helmet, also a businessman's bowler and the bearskin cap of a palace guard. A musical chase ensues around swinging 60s London, evading press and police. Well. So, let's move on to the last of the questions relating to my family. My late aunt, Sheila, was once invited to have tea with Roger Moore, but to her eternal regret she couldn't go. What 1989 Andrew Lloyd Webber musical was Sir Roger Moore supposed to be in, as the character George, before he left the cast a mere 2 weeks before the opening night? And whilst you're ruminating on that question, let's hear another song from Ed Fringe the Musical. This one's called Guardians of the Fringe, and it's a lightly satirical swipe at the companies which run all the accommodation, or at least most of it, at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe.
Come play in my courtyard or hide in my dome. You'll spot some celebrities, but leave them alone. Look at my funky artwork with my kooky cartoons. All my signposts will leave you lost like a bunch of buffoons. I can bring you laughter on a cloudy day. biggest halls in town. With our own special brochure,
which excludes all the crap.
we will buy a
Or wipe out the competition on the whole Midlothian map. If you score a hit with us, you'll be a hero for the day. But with a gilded balloon,
our assembly pass,
there comes a price to pay.
We are the superhero venue team, here to cash in on your dreams.
We in 1 and 1 in 3, the corporate kings of comedy. All the other venues whinge. We're the guardians of the fringe.
Underbelly, 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 underbelly. Follow the cow. Underbelly, underbelly,
Love that
underbelly. Follow the cow. Underbelly, underbelly,
moo.
Love that Yo, follow the cow, follow the cow, follow the cow.
Bedlam, speed and the space, move the hell out our way. Summer Hall and the caves have a price on their heads. And the venues at sea, we will make sure they're crushed. Don't get us started on the free fringe.
We will tread them into the dust. Tread them into the dust. Into the dust. We are the superhero venue team, here to cash in on your dreams. The festival is ours to guide. Shows that live and duds that die. You will snort and gag and cringe. We're the guardians of the fringe.
Pokemon.
Welcome back. What show did Sir Roger Moore leap out of 2 weeks before it was due to open? And the answer is Aspects of Love. He later said in an interview that he was unable to cope with the technical side of singing in Aspects of Love, and that the production required someone with an experience of orchestras. A great pity though, because I can remember at the time the excitement that there was a chance of seeing Sir Roger Moore on stage. And I certainly remember seeing his name on the advertising, or I should say the pre-advertising, at the time. So, now for a different kind of question. This is a lyric. Simply, what show does this lyric come from?
You just move a finger, say the slightest word. Something's bound to linger, be heard.
And, as you ponder the wonder of those lyrics, and the show from which they came, let's hear a song from Naylor Needs a Holiday, the musical, which was a wonderful show I saw in Edinburgh this year, and featured a song I thought was marvellous. Well, Naylor, the woman about whom the musical was written, has allowed us to play it here on Musical Talk. It's called How Bohemian, and I think this is wonderful.
This room will be visited 1,000 years from now by people who are curious to see this well-beloved attraction in artistic anthropology. And when they visit our humble quarters, they cannot help but think that it takes a truly dedicated artist to sleep under the sink. How eccentric, how romantic, how bohemian. Small housing is the key. How bohemian to creativity. All great minds live modestly. Mozart, Van Gogh, or Dostoevsky, Charles Bukowski, and me. How bohemian. A mattress on the floor. How bohemian. Feel the wind under the door. I'll get some 19th century lung infection, which is obviously curable with modern medicine, but still, I will look worryingly thin. How bohemian. I don't even have a chair. How bohemian. Think I should grow my armpit hair. I'm a free spirit. I'm a beatnik. I'm a cabaret singer in the Weimar Republic. How chic. How artistique.
There we are, How Bohemian from Naylor Needs a Holiday. And if you want to look that up online, Naylor is spelt N-E-L-E. And we'll be having an interview with Naylor and talking about that wonderful show in a future episode of Musical Talk. But what about the lyrics? You just move a finger, say the slightest word, something's bound to linger, be heard. It's probably not been said very well there, but you get the idea. It's from No One Is Alone from Into the Woods by Stephen Sondheim. Now, let's move on to the next question. It's fairly well known that Stephen Sondheim is not a great fan of the lyrics of W.S. Gilbert, although he did see fit to parody them in Pacific Overtures, but we'll leave that to one side. But that does lead us into the wonderful world of Gilbert and Sullivan. So, here's a question. As a young scholar, Sir Arthur Sullivan was involved in rediscovering much lost music by Franz Schubert. It seems amazing that Schubert's music wasn't all collected, but it turns out, if you know anything about the history of music, that a lot of things are lost. So when Sullivan and his friend Sir George Grove, who compiled the famous Dictionary of Music, discovered the lost music for Schubert's Rosamunde, they were so elated that they played leapfrog in the streets of Vienna. I think that's a wonderful story. It's hard to think of a fusty Victorian composer playing leapfrog anywhere. But then again, W.S. Gilbert famously tried the new fad of roller skates around Kensington. So they both had a spark of fun and life in them, which I think is really obvious from the work they did. But there we go. But we were talking about lost music. And this is a very simple question. What is the lost Gilbert and Sullivan operetta? And there's a supplementary question. Do you know where I can find it? And whilst you wait for the answer, let's hear a song by an old friend of this programme, Colin Malloy. It's from his show Forbidden Fruit, and it's called Pin Up Broad.
Miss Betty vote, the loss is all yours, because what's underneath this petticoat can instigate wars. So forge the wrought hypocrisy. They wouldn't give in to what she desired, and what was proved unrequired. Suffragette Betty, I'm here all night. And I'm not just a stripper, I'm a sodomite. But they won't change the law unless I'm awfully polite. Don't hesitate to liberate us, you'll see the light. Sorry, no reward. Some things you can't afford. And that's a pin-up.
Well, the answer to the question, which is the lost Gilbert and Sullivan musical, and therefore a bit of a holy grail, the answer is Thespis. And it's the one they wrote before they joined up with Richard Doyley Cart as their producer. Only 3 musical passages from Thespis are known to survive. There's the ballad, Little Maid of Arcady. There's the chorus, Climbing Over Rocky Mountain, which of course made it into Pirates of Penzance. And then of course the ballet music, which has only been discovered fairly recently. The fate of Sullivan's score has long been subject for speculation. In 1978, Isaac Asimov wrote a time travel story called Fair Exchange, with a question mark, which focused on a character travelling back to 1871 to rescue the score of Thespis before Sullivan could destroy it. Although it's not true that Sullivan actually destroyed it, it was just mislaid over the years. And Isaac Asimov himself is responsible for something musical, although it's a fictional thing. He invented a fictional musical instrument called the Vizisonar, which is the instrument played by the clown Magnifico in the Foundation and Empire book. Anyway, let's go back to Sondheim. We mentioned him earlier. He wrote a song, From Anyone Can Whistle, called Everybody Says Don't. However, there's a current musical which features a song called Everybody Says Yeah. What is that musical? And whilst we're waiting, let's hear a song from Bach, which you may remember David Herzog was talking about in a recent episode of Musical Talk. This song, which he was given permission to play, is by David Troy Francis, Mark Winkler, Gavin Jeffrey Dillard and Robert Schrock.
I belong to Jim and Jane. I have the perfect life. They treat me like a princess. Jane is the perfect wife. They let me go out walking just behind the picket fence. It's full of grass, well manicured and loaded with good sense. And we have meatloaf every night, stuffed with white bread in every bite, spoiled rotten to the core. Oh, they couldn't love me more. I belong to Steve and Steve. I have the perfect life. They treat me like a princess. Who cares if there's no wife? We have a great apartment, custom Berber on the floor. Truck lighting here and fabric there. It's fabulous decor. And I have chicken every night, adorned with truffles in every bite, which I just adore. Oh, they couldn't love me more.
I belong to Ben and Esther. I have the perfect life. They treat me like a princess. I have no cares or strife. Well, come to think about it, my knees aren't what they once were. Don't hear so well or pay too good, my eyes are just a blur. But I have blintzes every night, served with sour cream in every bite, with calories galore. Oi, they couldn't love me more.
But when they leave me all alone, then I like to throw a fit.
I yip and howl, I bark and growl. I'm not liking it one bit.
I'll eat some shoes, then take a snooze, and then I'll bite the chair. I'll mess the rug and give a tug on that curtain over there.
are fussy. We like to go out riding and to sit in the front seat. We sniff the air and watch for dogs and yap at those we meet. And we go to the vet each year. He sticks a needle into our rear, yep, which we just abhor. Oh, they couldn't love us. Bum 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 bum.
There we are, a song from Bach. But the question was, what musical features the song Everybody Says Yeah? It's Kinky Boots by Cyndi Lauper, soon to close in London. Right, something very different. Which 5 times Tony Award winner for choreography, that's the clue, who died in 1998, would have celebrated his centenary this year? And to give you the traditional thinking time, let's hear a song from another friend of this programme, Michael Gordon Shapiro, from his wonderful musical The Bully Problem. And this is a song called Operational.
System diagnos komplett. Harsimenie och gratulationer till ditt shop Aveni Antropomorpha Automatisk Personlig Assistant.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Language detected. English, United States dialect. Are you Dykstra? Kevin R.
Yeah?
Scanning retina.
Ow!
Paired with owner!
Wait, what? I didn't ask to be paired.
Congratulations on your purchase of a registered autonomous assistant version beta 7.9. I bring the benefits of cutting-edge technology and 7 years of research and unparalleled design. I'm pleased to meet you and begin my functions. I truly aim to raise the bar. My diagnostics tell me memory, sensors, servos, motors, drives, and software are operational. My comprehension of 100 human languages allows you to commend me in the manner that you please.
Stop talking.
My neural networks and semantic informatics let me process and anticipate your future needs with ease. I'm primed and ready to begin assistance and be a member of your team.
I don't have a team.
My power levels are unsteady due to software bugs, but otherwise I seem operational. I am designed to nurture all that is best in human potential. If one would truly live in full, then certain goals are essential. One has to strive to set new sights, to reach for stars, to scale new heights, to hear their call. But most of all, to find a circle of one's peers. My prime directive is exceptional companionship, providing you with guidance through the challenges to come. In matters physical or mental or logistical, consider me your maitre d' and confidant and chum. I am the zenith of design cognition. I passed the Turing test with ease. Isverja haktes et gemičke snadskap og et Nobelprisi expertise.
Wrong language.
Operational. This is the dawning of a new adventure. The world is set to be explored.
It's just a bus.
And at this happy juncture you will find me ready, willing, able, set, and all across the board. Operational.
There we are, Operational by Michael Gordon Shapiro and his musical The Bully Problem. And the voice you heard, by the way, was T.R. Krupa. I like that song a great deal. But then again, I like most of Mike's songs. But the question was, which choreographer who died in 98 would have been 100 this year? And the answer is Jerome Robbins. And he wasn't just a choreographer, he was a director and also a show doctor. And he's credited with saving Sondheim's Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum by devising the Comedy Tonight opening to explain to the audience what was happening. Well, there's time for just one more question in this year's Christmas quiz, and I think it's quite simple. But let's find out. So, here it is. Who wrote the lyrics to Keep the Home Fires Burning? A song we've heard so much about in the centenary marking the end of the First World War. It's a wonderful song and an evergreen. And whilst you're thinking up the answer to that, let's hear another song by another show I hope will also be an evergreen, The House of Edgar. And this is, I think, my favourite song from that score, The Telltale Heart.
I am dreadfully nervous, but I am not mad. Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
When I first had the faintest of foulest of thoughts, unfeasible to say, but once lodged in the back of my restless brain, it would haunt me night and day. The old man never harmed no man, but it was by his hand that I thrived. Yet I took delight in the right to ensure that by night he would no longer survive.
He had never wronged me, he had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. So for 7 nights by lantern light I hid outside his door, and the time was spent to sharpen senses, but fearless, nervous of the nearness of the task that I perform. Lantern aloft, I slowly pushed the lonely door aside. With disbelief I saw him wake from his sleep, his eyelids peeled back wide. Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I planned. Madmen know nothing, they know not a jot. Nervous I may be, but a madman I'm not. Yes, manic I may be, but a madman I'm not. Subduing my pride, I knelt down by the side and gazed upon the source of my rage, of my pain, of my fear and disdain, of an evil cold and coarse. From his mouth came too late to unseal his fate a single final cry, as with his last living look he fixed me with that pale blue vulture's eye. His pulse rang like a drum beat of thudding bass and marching snare, and it faded into the distance as I entered the vulture's glare. The night waned, and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse, I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then tore up 3 planks from the flooring and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye,
not even his, could have detected anything wrong. As the bell sounded the hour, I heard a knocking at the door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men, officers of the police, who said they had heard a shriek. I told them the old man was away in the country, and bade they search his house well.
Now this is the point, you fancy me mad. You would not judge if you saw how I... Like a pocket watching cotton, the softest ticking caught my ear, and it rose like a double-time bass drum beat, marching ever near. And like a disease of pained unease took root deep in my gut. It seeped and spread and oozed and wept like a foul and festering cut. As it rose running red like cloying blood lumping back at the back of my throat, it mixed with the deafening dead man's pulse to produce a pounding note. The chaotic chord crescendo, it was the devil's art. I fell to my knees before the police, overwhelmed by his telltale heart.
So, the question was, who wrote the lyrics to Keep the Home Fires Burning? And the answer is Lena Gilbert Ford. Now, I have a little mea culpa. I have, in a previous episode, and it was a long, long time ago, many, many years in fact, said that the person who wrote the lyrics to Keep the Home Fires Burning was Ivor Novello's mother. It's not true, but it's often thought to be the case. Now, I unravelled that particular story in that recent episode of Musical Talk about that song, and when I discussed it with Professor Michael Williams. But in a previous episode, as I say many years ago, I fell into the trap of taking the popular story at face value and suggested that Ivor Novello's mother had written the lyrics, but it wasn't. It was Lena Gilbert Ford. Now, if you go to the Musical Talk YouTube page, you'll see that someone has quite rightly picked me up on that error. And so I think it's right now, here at the end of this programme, at the end of 2018, to try and make amends a little. Because there isn't really very much information about Lena Gilbert Ford out there. But what little there is, I've tried to gather together in order to some way pay homage to that woman who was a tremendous lyricist and, of course, someone who is really important in the history of musical theatre by writing those lyrics with Ivor Novello for possibly one of the best-known songs of the 20th century. but also to make amends for getting that wrong some years ago. So, here we go. Well, I can tell you that she was American, that she was a poetess, and that she lived in Britain with her son. She was divorced from her husband, who was still in America. She lived in Warrington Crescent in St John's Wood, and she wrote a number of other songs. Now, I warn you, if you go to Wikipedia, which is useful as a general guide but not for detail, I can tell you that one or two of the songs it's listed as being songs with lyrics by Lena Gilbert Ford are wrong. So I've tried to do some further research. Songs I can tell you genuinely have a provenance where she wrote the lyrics include God Guard You, which she wrote with Westall Gordon in 1917. Another song from 1917 called For Me Remembrance, which she wrote with Leo Cohnreich, Cohnreich, and a song called The Road Back Home, a song which she wrote with Jean Nouges, Jeannouggues. That's from 1916. Now, of course, she never really had the success that she had with Keep the Home Fires Burning again, but she did continue to write songs. And I think for that, she must be remembered. Particularly in those first years of the 20th century, a female lyric writer with success under her belt was a very unusual thing indeed. But perhaps, unfortunately, her life is mostly marked by the manner of her death, because regrettably in 1918, on the night of the 7th and 8th of March, there was a very early bombing raid by the Germans on London. And regrettably, two of the victims were Lena Gilbert Ford and her son Walter. What happened was, two bombs landed on their house in St John's Wood, which then collapsed. Ironically, her mother, Mrs Ford, who was 86 years old at the time, survived because the family maid was able to pull her from the wreckage. That was not true for Lena or her son. In the contemporary records, it was identified, but there was a certain irony, and indeed poignancy, that the writer of the song, i.e. the lyrics in this case, of Keep the Home Fires Burning, which celebrated the quiet stoicism of the home front through an image of home fires burning, should die as a direct hit by a bomb. And, of course, therefore, a totally different kind of home fire burning. And the New York Times reported on the story, and I quote, "Two bombs were dropped together on the house of Mrs. Lena Gilbert Ford, the American poet who was killed in the air raid last week, and on the adjoining dwelling," an army expert testified at the inquest today. The bombs exploded simultaneously. The coroner's jury found the death of Mrs. Ford, best known as author of the war song Keep the Home Fires Burning, and that of her son Walter, was due to suffocation from the collapse of a house caused by the explosion of bombs from a hostile aircraft. And regrettably, the story doesn't end there, because there was a certain scandal at the inquest when her former husband's attorney, and remember that she was divorced from Walter Ford, the husband, shocked the inquest by demanding to know whether his estranged wife or his son had died first, because if it had been his son dying first, he would then inherit Mrs. Ford's estate. And regrettably, that was a legal problem that then took some time to untangle. It's a very sad epitaph for a very promising career cut short. But I do hope that I've done justice to Lena Gilbert Ford and gone a small way to amend the error in that episode of Musical Talk from many years ago. Well, that's all very low-key and miserable. We can't finish this episode this way. So, what we're going to do is we're going to finish in style with a seasonal cabaret song. It's by the wonderful, versatile, talented, and he's a friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Gordon Shapiro. It's sung by Ian Federgreen, and it's called Happy Holidays. And I shall take my cue from that. Happy holidays, everyone, or, as we say in Britain, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, happy holidays. I'm just here to say that I'm too cheap to send a card. I wish you lots of cheer throughout the coming year. But writing dear whoever 57 times is way too hard. If I sent you a card, you'd get it, then throw it away, admit it. Why waste all those stamps and spit it? Seems much simpler just to quit and wish you happy holidays. I could have sent some cash your way or hired a horseman and a sleigh, but since it's free, I sent a song more thoughtful than a gift. Is the exercise of thrift. Not only is delivery swift, I saved a tree. Is that so wrong? Look, presents don't cause happiness. The wrapping paper makes a mess. The whole procedure causes stress. So let me do what I do best. And wish you happy holidays. Happy holidays. Today, you can still get me something, though.
This episode of Musical Talk compiled, edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2018, except for all the songs where the copyright remains with the original creators. And my thanks to each and every one of them for allowing us to play their songs on Musical Talk over the last year or so, and of course therefore in this episode. I really do hope you enjoyed their music as much as I have. It's a privilege to hear it, and it's a privilege to be able to play it in this episode. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Musical Talk Thos.